Hello everyone. Welcome to my teaching learning session and we continue with BPCC 131 block 4 today, a very new unit that we are going to continue, which is personality and intelligence. Personality and intelligence usually go hand in hand. We always feel that personality would not something will be associated to intelligence, but this unit will tell us that how personality makes us unique and how intelligence makes us identified in the environment. So let's start with what's personality. Personality is an enduring characteristic which remains stable across time and situation. So we need to know that personality is not something that will keep changing time and again. It is an enduring characteristic, enduring that suggests something which stays for a longer period of time. And usually personalities are responses to situations. So Schultz in 2013 also stated that personality characteristics are formed when we tend to respond to situations. Also, according to APA, personality refers to individual differences characterizing someone's patterns of behavior, thinking, and feelings. At the same time, personality being a very big paradigm which divides people, make them identify as the person that they are, have three major theories: the type, the trait, and the interactional approach, which is also called as interactionism. So the type approach simply says that personality is a class of individual that shares a common collection of characteristic. That means it's a kind of theory which is suggesting that we classify people into types, which is categories on the basis of similarities. So people who are talkative tend to be in one fraction of paradigm, and people who are probably very shy would be in another category. So all shy people would be another category. So this is identifying personality on the basis of type, which is similarity. When we talk about trait is a differing concept which suggests that we are identifying people as unique on the basis of the different characteristics, which suggests that on the basis of difference in their characteristic, which will be attributes. So some people can be talkative, would be separate. Some people could be shy. Some people could be gregarious. Some people could be speaking of. If some people could be intelligent, some people would be socially outgoing. Some people, at the same time, would be the ones who are great speakers, communicators. So this suggests that individual personalities are composed of. This is on the basis of differences. So type was on the basis of similarity, trait is on the basis of differences, and interaction approach says that personality is an outproduct of the environment. That means the kind of environment that we are a part of, the kind of situational factors that we are a part of, personality would be influenced by that. That suggests personality is influenced by situational factors. If you are happy today and you show a happy-go-lucky characteristic of you, it could, according to interactionism, can be because of just situational factors, just the factors which are situations buried and not something which could be directly related to your enduring characteristics. So these are the three that we have, and let's differentiate between the type and the trait. See, the type refers to psychological classification, which says that different people are classified together on the basis of their similarity. Trait is psychological classification on the basis of difference in levels or degrees. So they are different, which is we classify people as unique on the basis of how different they are from each other. And type is classifying them into categories on the basis of how similar they are to each other. So let's take the example which is also given on the image. According to type theories, there are two kinds of people: extrovert and introvert. So the trait theory says introversion and extroversion is on a continuous dimension. So according to trait theories, it's a continuous dimension like a scale. On the other side would be introversion, and then it could be people who are in the middle paradigm, and then it could be extroversion, people on the final paradigm. So this is introversion and extroversion that we talk about, which is speaking of the three major theories that actually takes care of personality factors. Now let's come to a major part of the theory which states to be of Freud. Freud suggested what? Let's talk about Sigmund Solomon Freud's contribution to personality development. Personality development, according to Sigmund Freud, happened at various levels. He gave three major contribution, which is topographic model of psyche, the structural model of personality, the psychosexual stages of personality. So, according to Sigmund Freud, which was the what was the highlight in a person? The highlight in the person was the unconscious mental processes, which was the central theme. So, according to Freud, all your desires, wishes, motivations, we experience are usually something that we are not aware of. Why? Because they are coming from unconscious. Let's understand that concept of unconscious also. So, according to Sigmund Freud, aspects of human behavior, such as aggression, sexual drives, also play a very important role in personality. So, Sigmund Freud was one of the most radical psychologists who were different from others, gave different ideas about personality development. Was the first who spoke about unconscious to be very important. Was the first to speak about sexual desires being a part of your personality development. And let's start with the first model of Sigmund Freud, which was the topographic model. It's called the topographic model because it also looks like an iceberg and it's a very graphical thing. Let's understand what are the three contribution here and how did he say that this is the topographic model of psyche. That means the bifurcation of your mind, not the brain. Brain is the physical part, mind is the thinking part, the feeling part. So first comes the conscious, something that I'm giving out a session and listening to me is conscious, something that we are aware of, we can deal with right now, right here. Then there's preconscious. Preconscious is something which is associated with something that we don't remember right now, but can be got back to our conscious level with a little bit of revision, with a little bit of what you call the little bit of digging inside, going back to text, going back to experiences. So preconscious is something that we are not aware of, but we can be aware of. Conscious is something we're aware of right now, right here. And unconscious is something which is completely unknown. The mental processes that Sigmund Freud, emphasized upon, which was called the unconscious. The unconscious is one of those matter which people are not aware of. This is that matter that people usually also take it as hidden. We don't know how it functions. We don't know what is there within it. And further. So this is the first topographic model. Now let's, as per the topographic model, we also had something which was associated to the topographic model of psyche was also associated to structure of personality. So let's understand, know about it a little. Freud published his idea of psychopathology of everyday life, like how psychopathology happens to everyday life of an individual in 1901, very early times of contribution. According to him, our conscious mind is that kind of mind which is dealing with the current information. So let's take an example. You're studying right now, you're eating something, you have a knock at the door. This is something which is just the current information. And why the current information? Because it's aware to you. It's something which is happening in front of you. That's our thoughts and feelings that you're completely aware of. Your conscious mind is taking care of it. And it can be retrieved easily. Something that happens, you can tell back, this is what happened with me. Then comes the preconscious or the subconscious is mentioned. This is information that we are not currently aware of, but we can get back to attention if we pay a little, we revise the concept, we go back to the old memories, we look forward to it. We can completely be aware of it. Then we come to the unconscious. This part of the mind stores those socially unacceptable needs, desires, and feelings that we do not wish to share with people. And with the passage of time, these become unconscious. These become something that we are completely not aware of. We are unaware of this sector of our mind. Something which is deprived, something that is a desire which should not be told to people, a desire which is societally wrong. Society would not be accepting to it. So this was a topographic model in a full understanding. After this, he gave another interesting aspect of personality, which was called the structure model of personality. So according to Freud, that your personality functions with the help of three elements: id, ego, superego. So let's understand them: the id, ego, and the superego. So in a very general thought process, I'll just give you an example to make you understand that. It is something, let's take an example. Someone wants to have an ice cream right now, scorching heat, too much of temperature. You want to probably have a bowl of, filled with ice cream, and you want it right now, want to eat it right now. You will not listen to people. That's called the id. Where you need immediate gratification, where you do not listen to people, when there is no regard for other people, that's called the id. Superego at the other end that we talk about is all the learning, all the moral values, all the morality that we've received from our parents, instructions through socialization. So you can't do it, and because you feel that no, ice cream cannot have it at any point of time, I'll probably have to wait for a meal until my mother does not allow. Ice cream is not a good thing to be had at any point of time. So you can't, because you are in the middle of the day. It's not the right time, and you don't eat it like that. So this is filled with morality, values, instruction from parents, socialization, thought process. It's called the superego. Now comes the ego that we will talk about, and let's go through it with each part and some characteristics. So it is what it operates unconsciously always. Why unconsciously? It does not know what's happening to it. It needs immediate gratification, functions on biological basic instincts, and obviously aggressive impulses. That's why it's instinctual, it's instant. And the most primitive need of human personality is it, which is the basic drive which cannot be controlled. From it, the other parts of personality, which is ego and superego, also develops. So they're all expanding from it. Also remember, it is called the pleasure principle. It always seeks the pleasure to avoid the pain. It is about gratifying one's need without any conscious moral values of the society and the individuals. Hope that's understood. Then we move to something which is ego. Let's come to superego first, because ego is something which is, weighing the entire balance out of the two. Superego is the moral master, the moral guru. It's also called the moral principle of personality. It is the role of superego is to internalize all the moral values of the society, the ethical values and instructions of the society through the process of socialization to the child, to the individual. It controls all your impulsive urges. All your basic drives are actually controlled. The fact that you want to eat anything and everything right now, it's controlled by superego. Superego will tell you, no, this is not the right time, you should not be doing it. So it's a complete no that we talk about it. Then also, when we talk about, they're very morally appropriate. They might not go according to the reality, but go according to the morals, go according to the values. So morality also does not have a check here. It is more, you will find that this is more interestingly associated to your morality principle. And then we come to something which is ego. So let me make you understand, when the ego is functioning, when the id is functioning, let's take an example. You want to eat the ice cream right now, right here. But superego is also there. If too much of it will happen, if you have too much of immediate gratification, no constant, there's no control, there's no pain that you're avoiding, you end up taking too much of pleasure, you will end up going against the society, you will end up going against the morals of the society. So the ego needs to make a balance of it. How does it does? It will make sure that you get the gratification of your needs, but ego is the reality principle. It makes sure that it makes realistic, reasonable compensations with you, which is like reasonable amount of compensations with you, and then make you accept the aid and make you eat an ice cream. So let's take an example. It's 12 noon. You feel you want to have an ice cream right now. 12 noon, not a meal time, just kept in the, it's just kept in the cupboard and you want to have it. So what will the ego do? Ego will work on the reality principle, make the child understand you want to have it. Obviously, it will be given to you, but it will not be given to you inappropriately. Because of the fact that we have the superego also to be managed, what will happen? You will wait till the meal. The noon time happens. 2 o'clock, you have your meal, and then you ask your mother for an ice cream. So you get an ice cream. So what is happening? It is also getting satisfied. The superego is also getting satisfied. The ego balances both the things, like, the balance in between. So that's how ego and superego functions in us. I'll give you another example. I'm sure we might have seen horses running in golf courses, in the courses of races and everything. So have you seen that the horses have blinders here? They have blinders so that they see straight. So what is the blinder that is there for? The blinder is the superego. Why? Because it will not make you see here or here. It will make you just function correctly, appropriately, no mistakes. What is the horse? The horse is the id, the undoubted energy, the too much of energy, the too much of pleasure the horse wants by running across is something which is the id. Also, then what is the ego? Who's managing both of it? The person who is sitting and holding the rein and holding the horse is the ego. Why? That they will push, pull, control the speed, hold the horse, tell the horse to go in what direction. It's all something which is ego, which is again impulses control. Nothing which is gratifying. The gratification of the horse is happening right here, right now. At the same time, the horse also gets the opportunity to run fast, to run at its own maximum potential. So that's how id, ego, superego functions, and these three components are present in all of us. It's there with all of us. Let's understand where does the id, ego, superego falls in the topographic model of the mind. See, it is completely unconscious because it is functioning on the grounds of pleasure principle. Then we have preconscious. Preconscious has a little bit of something which is unconscious, a maximum amount of preconscious, because ego is actually the reality principle, and external reality also, internal reality also, and at the same time it is there in both the spheres. The maximum amount is in the preconscious. Similarly goes to superego. Superego is maximally in your preconscious because it's all the learning which you've got from age 2, 3, 4, and 5, and now you're 20 or 15, and that's the amount of values that you have been preserving. It's also in the unconscious, and it's also in the conscious. Conscious a little bit. Why? Because we have to function there, and we don't use our brains. The values are just learned as absolute values. That's why it's called the moral principle. And why it's in the unconscious? Because it is coming from, see, values are a very ancestrally things. It's coming from far older times of life, and coming from your grandfather ages, grandfather to great grandfather ages. So remember, it does have a lot of wishes and desires which has been preserved, and the reason they are coming to you. So it's a very preserved value. It's a very hidden value which has been coming from ages, at times without any logic, and too many desires to probably overcome something. So that's why it's in the unconscious. The maximum amount is in the preconscious because it's comprised of learning, which can come out any point of time, and a very little in the conscious. That completes with our id, ego, superego, preconscious, unconscious, and conscious bifurcation. But Sigmund Freud does not get over here. Sigmund Freud also mentioned that we have something called ego defense mechanism. I'll apprise you with them. Ego defense mechanism, why there was a need of it. So let's understand. If there's the functionality of the it is too much, remember the person will be dysfunctional in society. Remember, you gratifying your needs, desires, hidden desires which are societally wrong. You're actually satisfying them. It's not correct. And at the same time, the ego is always managing it. The ego might get tired. It's like managing your aid, managing your desires every time. So ego requires some defenses when the anxiety and stress from the hidden desires and motives from the it becomes very overwhelming. So we tend to have this strategy called ego defense mechanism that we use when the anxiety from the it crosses too much. And the sole aim of ego defense mechanism is to protect the psyche, to protect the mind from so much of anxiety which is happening because of something which is it. Now, because it is pleasurable, it is sinful. I feel not to be said, but it is something which is sinful. It is something which is difficult, and at the same time, we need to know it will make you do things which you might have not thought in your real reality. So we need to be careful. That's why ego always balances us. Ego always makes sure that we have the maximum things done correctly and appropriately. Now, speaking of that, let's come to the different kinds of ego defense mechanism. Ego cannot always delay things, cannot always find an appropriate right. Ego also needs some defenses and strategies. Let's start with the first one with the help of examples. It's given on the image for an elaborate understanding. So speaking of that, first is something which is denial. What is denial? Denial is something which is refusal of the real event actually taking place. So because it's unpleasant, you do not want to focus on it, you do not want to pay attention, you completely deny. You refuse the happening of that event. Let's take an example. Kyla refuses to admit that she is an alcoholic or has an alcohol problem because she's unable to, go a single day without excessively drinking. So she, does what? She denies the world. She denies the world to be appropriate, to be societally correct. But then there are days she cannot go without it. So why do we deny it in the public? So that the amount of anxiety which is happening and the judgment that the people are giving, that's taken care of. Then we have something which is displacement. Displacement is something we all use, I feel, right from children. Children obviously maximally use displacement, but I feel today even adults are doing that because of so much of stress, so much of panic that we have around. So displacement is transferring the inappropriate urges or behaviors to a more acceptable or less threatening person, particle, or environment. So you displace from energies from the original to a displaced individual or a situation or a person. So during lunchtime at a restaurant, Mark is angry, at his older brother, and but he does not express it and instead verbally abuse the server. We do that. We do that very often. If imagine the teenagers tend to have huge fights with their friends, and then they come home and get angry with their mothers and siblings. That's displacement. A beautiful example I feel that we all go through. Then we have something which is projection. Projection is attributing your unacceptable desires to others, which is, let's take an example that it's given that Chris often cheats on her boyfriend because she suspects that he is already cheating on her. This is so absurd. You project your feelings and desires onto other people. Then is rationalization. Rationalization is one of the most common defense mechanism. Rationalization is about excuse making. Why did your paper do not go well? Oh, the paper is very lengthy. I had to leave the last two questions. I lost the maximum marks there. Why were you? Why is your performance going down lately? I am paying too much of attention to my co-curricular activities. So that's rationalizing, which is justifying your behavior by substituting with a less acceptable real reason or an acceptable reason. So that's something, a reasonable reason that you put out, or something which is less acceptable. Like Kim failed in his history course because did not study, but he said that roommate has that he failed because the professor did not like him. So this obviously can be like rationalization completely. Then we come to something which is reaction formation. Let's remember reaction formation as an opposite reaction. It is reducing anxiety by adopting belief contrary to the original belief. So if the original belief is disliking, you end up liking the person. So like let's take the example. Nadia is angry with her co-worker Beth for always arriving late to work after the night of partying, but then she's being nice, agreeable to Beth, and affirms that partying is very cool. So this is something which is again reaction formation. Another good example for teenagers to understand that we should take is that when we are speaking of something which is children today, they tend to get into these popular groups, and the groups that they dislike, the owners that they dislike, the people that they dislike, but they still like being there. So when they like being there, well, what's with the problem? The problem is they are wanting to be a part of that popular group despite of not liking them. So they end up going to that group and saying, "Oh, I'm so fond of you. Your work is so great. You're one of the great people that I've had and met." So you're showing a very contrary feeling towards them to be a part of that group. Then we have something which is regression. Regression is returning to coping strategies for less mature stages of development, which is, obviously after failing a doctoral exam, Georgia spends an entire day cuddling to her favorite childhood toy. That's something which we suggest as regression. Also, repression. Repression is suppressing painful feelings and thoughts, which is Lascia cannot remember her grandfather's fatal heart attack, although she was present there. This is like repressing the painful memory. You motivatedly forget something because you do not want to be a part of it. You feel it's difficult to understand, etc. So that is something that we speak of as repression. Repression is nowadays, I feel, becoming a part of a lot of people's day-to-day living. They tend to motivatedly forget an event because that's been very hurtful, very embarrassing, very painful to them. Then there is sublimation, which is directing your socially unacceptable desires through a very socially acceptable and proved ways. Like let's take an example: a person desires to take a revenge on the drunk driver who killed his son and is channelized into community support for people who have lost the loved ones for drunken driving. Also, a lot of people who attempt, if it's done on themselves, they have attempted an accident or done something wrong to the lower class people, they end up donating to that lower class people and start giving to them. So that is sublimation, changing your unacceptable desires to and channelizing it to very acceptable society ways. These are ego defense mechanisms. So be completing and understanding why they are needed, because your ego might get exhausted, might get might get tired of managing how to make your it be accepted and super ego also be managed at the same time. So apart just simple management, ego requires strategies, which is called ego defense mechanism. Excessive usage of ego defense mechanism can also further lead to problems, which is it could further lead to difficulties. And speaking of difficulties, it could lead to maladaptive behaviors. So that completes another major aspect of Sigmund Freud's. And now let's start with the psychosexual stages of development. This was one of the most talked about stages of Sigmund Freud, something which was also not accepted by the world. People stated that this is something which is not correct, and we probably would not allow. People said that Sigmund Freud's idea of psychosexual development was too progressive. Not everybody will have stages of development like this. Not all of us. Even mentioning it's even about us. We will also not go through sexually developing stages. So, to introduce these stages were five in number by Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud stated that we have an erogenous zone in our body that is satisfied at every stage of life. So there is a physical body zone which is satisfied at every stage of life, even starting at 0 to 18 months. Also, not satisfying that body zone will lead to, it will lead to overcompensating in life or probably difficulties, maladaptive behaviors in life, which was happening. So, five stages of development, according to Sigmund Freud, the personality development starts from zero and gets completed by 15 to 18 years of life. According to him, the development of in the individual's personality only ranges till 15 years of life, 15 to 16, nothing more than that, according to Sigmund Freud, irrespective of culture, caste, classes, etc. Let's start with the first stage of development. This was called the oral stage of development, starting from 0 to 18. See here, the erogenous zone is the mouth, the pleasure-seeking, part of the body which needs to be satisfied is the mouth. Is the child, and also to be known, children are completely dependent on their mother for sanitation, caregiving, food, thirst, everything. So children completely depend on their caregivers, especially their mothers, and they derive pleasure and understand the world around them through suckling, swallowing, nibbling all the time. So mouth is something which is always being active, and they derive pleasure from that. They derive pleasure understanding of the world around them through suckling and swallowing. They also feel that the fact that they are being able to suckle and chew all the time also leads to something which is it's something which is associating to your what do you call this? This is associating to you being satisfied. You being satisfied is making you gratify, and this gratification will successfully make you reach to the next stage. Now, for example, people who are over gratified and under gratified may lead to fixations, according to Sigmund Freud. Now, let's understand what is fixation. Fixation is getting arrested at an early stage of development, which is, at the early stage, which is oral stage. You might just get fixated there, and because of fixation at this stage, anything associated to mouth might lead to difficulties or maladaptive behaviors later. So let's take an example. If a child is get fixated at the early stage of oral stage, and there's an you might see if the child has been underfed, there's going to be chances of the child craving of the oral stage. And for example, if the child is associating it's overfed, the child will have difficulties of addiction behavior, smoking, anything which is associated to this. So Freud called these people as oral incooperative or oral ingestive. So people who are fixated and over gratified, they are taken care too much, they eat a lot. Obesity could be a concern. They are overeating. Also, people who are underfed, which is not nibbled, suckling, feeding, weaning off is not done properly. Addiction, alcohol, drugs, smoking, etc. Known as oral incooperative and oral ingestive, respectively. Then we come to the second stage. Let's take an example. The child does not have any problem. The mouth is satisfied. And now the child moves to something which is the oral stage. After the oral, the anal stage. See, the anal stage talks about the time which a child is 18 to 3 years, which is 18 months to 3 years. So this is the time the child faces the demand of the society, where the child first learns, first time to control. Their society for the first time control is given to them. Of what? It's the toilet training. This is the time the parents are actually driving the child to learn toilet training. So children experience the pleasure in this stage of holding the bladder and releasing the bladder. Holding the bladder and releasing the bladder. So the anal stage is something which is again a stage of satisfaction. And Freud believed that too harsh and too lenient toilet training can lead to fixation with the child. So resulting in either, for example, if the training it's too harsh, the child is going to be very over controlled, too finicky about cleanliness and taking care, high amount of self-control. If the child has not been trained well, they are messy, they're less controlled, They're very generous, and they're called inner expulsive, or being too tidy, too orderly. They are people who are oral retentive, the ones who are too controlled. They've been given too harsh a toilet training. Don't, like, for example, a lot of parents tell their children when they leave them at the daycare, don't go to the washroom until I come in. Once I come in over there, then you go to the washroom. So child tends to hold their bladder from 8 to 12 o'clock. Remember, it's too harsh a training. The child will be too tidy. The child is going to be too orderly. High chances of obsessive compulsive disorder with this kind of children. So this is when there is fixation. So this is what will looks like: oral stage, anal stage, and third that we come down to is phallic stage, and then will be latency and genital. The phallic stage is some stages. I feel some cultures will not agree to this. Just this is a stage where the genitals become the center of attention. This is the erogenous zone because phallic comes from the Greek word phallos, which means penis. During this stage, the child unknowingly, touches their genitals, seeks pleasure, and they understand that their parents, what is the difference between how the male genital looks and female genital. So at this time, 3 to 5 years and 6 years of age, child understand that there's a difference in a girl and that there is a difference in a boy. During this stage, they understand the difference between males and females. Freud proposed that the male child starts experiencing a complex which is called the Oedipus complex. This is a real lifetime story. There was a king called Oedipus who started having feeling towards his mother and sexual feeling towards the mother, and that feeling of rivalry towards the father, as well of there was a threat of being punished by the father because he knew that I'm a son and I'm getting desires from my mother. So he had that fear that I will be, I would be taken care of, I will be threatened. So there was a huge threat and a feeling towards the mother, and the rivalry feeling towards the father. So this Oedipus, who was the prince, killed the father to get married to the mother and became the king. So the counterpart of the Oedipus is called the Electra. Electra is experienced by the female child. It involves attraction towards the father, the feeling of rivalry towards the mother, a threat of being punished by the mother for having feelings towards the father. Remember, these feelings also get resolved. By the child comes to the age of 5 years of age, it is stated that the child experiences all of this getting resolved. So, how does this resolution takes place? As the sexual, the Oedipus, the phallic complex increases, and you are get aware that yes, there are two people who are different. You also understand the kind of relationship that you're having. By the age of 6, the child maturely identifies. The boy starts role modeling the father, and the girl starts role modeling the mother. So, the real reason where the male child was always scared of the father was he always felt that I'll be castrated by my father, so it's better that I start respecting. But we should see this as, as Indian children, we feel this stage really does not happen with us, but it does. You can always feel when your father might have chuckled another child, you might have got angry. That's the phallic stage feelings. In Indian children, it's very less, yes, but it was a Greek concept which was taken back by Sigmund Freud, and another concept which was completely criticized, stating that children do not have such feelings. So, according to Sigmund Freud, you can get stuck to this stage if you do not resolve by identifying with the same sex parent. And then comes the latency stage, which is from 6 to 12 years old. This is a time, all the sexual energy gets channelized to social energy. Children gets academically driven, sports driven activities. There is least interest in opposite gender. They have no interest in sexual involvement, anything. So anything that has happened before this age of time is forgotten. Then we come to something which is genital stage, which is 13 to 15 to 16, according to Sigmund Freud. Freud stated this is the time that we are successfully completing our stages of development. We are capable of mature intimate relationship. We can look forward to heterosexual relationship. And if there are unresolved, any sort of unresolved previous issues in the psychosexual stages, Sigmund Freud stated that all will be reflected in your adulthood life, leading to difficulty in forming intimate relationship with opposite sex, difficulty in forming any kind of relationship, trust concerns. It could be problems in toilet training, and further leading to other maladaptive psychological disorders. So this is the complete stage of 5 of Sigmund Freud. Yes, completely running around, the unconscious, and running around the fact of the body, sexual urges and desires, which I feel is very unacceptable for a lot of the country. But these were 5 successful stages according to Sigmund Freud, stated by 0 to 15 and 15 to 16 and adult, and Development completes here, according to Freud. Few things to understand is fixation of every stage that could lead to maladaptive behavior later in life and personality development. That finishes. Let's go through a check of this, looking at the image on the left, which is 0 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 5, 6 to puberty latency, and puberty onwards is genital. What are the conflict? Weaning away from the mother's breast. Next is toilet training. Oedipus and phalanx. Oedipus complex and Electra complex. Puberty, we have none. We have nothing, no conflict. And the last is social rules. That is something that we have to get associated to. So that completes with something which is the psychosocial stages of development. Now let's understand, when we talk about social stages of development, we need to know one bigger thing that we always forget. Uh, Sigmund Freud was not accepted in that time of society. His sexual urges and his urge of unconscious wishes and desires, people developing psychosocial development of stages, sexually getting satisfied and gratified, a lot of dejection was coming to him. So neo-Freudians were post-Freudians who were actually followers and defectors of Freud, which is ones who actually worked with Sigmund Freud, but later moved away from Freud. There were people who were with him and the in most of the time, but later they moved away. The first person that we are going to talk about is Alfred Adler. Adler was somebody who was a follower, a part of the psychoanalyst forum of Sigmund Freud. But later, Adler moved away from Sigmund Freud, thinking that his concepts were far more different than he could have ever thought about. So he felt that this is not something that we should look forward to. This is not something that we should think of, because Adler stated a concept of individual psychology. He stated that everyone strives for glory, power, attain superiority in life, and to attain that superiority, we have to overcome all the obstacles of life. So people develop their own style of living, which is life meaningful. Adler's theory, considered in 1954, is considered as something which is uh, the individual psychology. He also proposed that one's personality development happens within one's social context. Something which Sigmund Freud completely derived us from. He said there is no social context, there isn't a need of the context that we have. So he mentioned that we have our personality development, according to Adler, as a social context. Second concept, we all have that wish to attain glory, power, and that happens when we overcome all the obstacles and inferiority in our life. We all that need that superiority. We want to be impressioning over other people. Also, he stated that according to Adler, an innate force is there that helps us perform this behavior, and he named this innate force that motivates us as motivation. Goals, personal goals. He stated these as personal goals. So anything that motivates us to strive for better, strive for power and glory, and strive is called innate in nature, that motivates an individual to reach the highest potential. The third thing that he mentioned was superiority and inferiority complex. According to Adler, every individual goes through inadequacy in life. Some sort of inadequacy of thought, inadequacy of behaviors, inadequacy of feelings. And our agenda and our aim is to overcome these feelings of inferiority and achieve the feeling of superiority, which is achievement of glory, power, overcoming all of the obstacles and becoming an optimal, fulfilling person, which was personality development according to Alfred Adler. Also, he introduced the concepts of sibling rivalry, stated that how children have competition for parents' love and attention between the two siblings that could lead to sibling rivalries and can impact the development of the child, and also the birth order that can impact the development of child. Birth order is who's the firstborn, secondborn, and thirdborn. So very interesting concepts that Adler came up with. The next was Carl Jung. Carl Jung was another neo-Freudian coming with concepts of analytical psychology, a very beautiful concept of psychology. He proposed that everyone has a personal unconscious that is composed of our own experiences, repressed feeling due to some reason. And he also said that everyone has the ability to balance this conscious and unconscious forces. Jung actually extended the idea of Freud's unconscious and stated as his collective unconscious. He did not agree with Sigmund Freud's idea of unconscious only having repressed feelings and desire. He mentioned these are all the experiences that we've had, and the repressed feelings and emotions. So it was called as the collective unconscious. So he deviated and extended that idea, and he also mentioned, yes, it's a storehouse of repressed memory, aggressive and sexual desires, but it is also a storehouse of all the experiences that we've had for some reason. So that's called the collective unconscious. That is a conscious which are held by all the humans. According to him, due to the evolutionary process and common ancestor, we all carry this common past. We all have gone through it. We've all gone through wars. We've all gone through a pandemic and experience of it. So according to him, this was something which was common and universal to everybody, which is called collective unconscious, serves as the foundation of personality. This collective unconscious also comprised of something called archetypes. One big feature that he said, archetypes are primordial images, which is the mother earth, the affection, which again is primitive in nature, universal and innate, common to all of us. Like mother is something which is an archetype, which is common to us all. Whenever we all think of mother, we think of unconditional love, unconditional availability, solutions to problems. So it is again primitive in nature, coming from very early times, and it has coming from our ancestral heritage. So these are called archetypes, which is primordial images, which is within our collective unconscious. Also, he stated that we need to know analytical psychology is about managing, it's about wholeness and unity, being able to manage your own identity by balancing the conflicts of outside world and the conflicts of inside. So persona of the self that we show to others, the anima female side of men and the animus female side of female, the shadow darker side of our personality. These were some concept given by Sigmund Freud's analytical psychology, which said that there is a need of wholeness and oneness in our personality, which comprises of everything: the female side of us, the male side of us, the shadow, the darker side of our personality, and the original self of us. So this was Carl Jung, which is this: the self, the ego, the persona, the shadow, the anima and animus. All of this is within our collective unconscious, and we need to balance all of this with respect to the outside society. Now, after this, we come to a behaviorist approach to personality. Behaviorist approach to personality was given by J.B. Watson. J.B. Watson stated that we need to study personality by something which is observable and testable. And according to them, behaviors, overt behaviors, observable behaviors can be testified also and can be verified also. B.F. Skinner has been one of the most influential behaviorists here. And according to them, the personality could be understood in relationship of S and R, stimulus and response. They also mentioned the role of reinforcement in the response. So that mentioned that we can make people learn to respond in a particular way by rewarding them, by reinforcing them. And these responses can be something which can be different from stimulus to stimulus, which is when we speak about people in terms of S and R, we can make them have better responses and give that responses time and again. How does that happen? When we reward them, when we reinforce them. So they are basically giving us three major theories, which is classical, instrumental, and observational learning, which is three major theory of behaviorism that we learn to get our better responses, learn better in society, and socially learn things better. Observational learning was one of the biggest landmark of behaviorist approach. Why? Because when we speak about observational learning stated that maximum of your behaviors are learned by observing others. So values, saying thank you, learning from others, we observe a lot and learn. So one of the most influential, I think, part of personality development was behaviorism. They stated that what we are is a result of how we are learning and what we are learning, which was through all of these conditioning. Then was the humanistic approach. Humanistic approach was a very positive approach, an approach which I feel not all of us will be associating ourselves, because the world today is so functional, so practical and active. We might feel humanistic is a little deviating from such thought, but this approach was called the third approach, the third force in psychology. Why? Humanistic approach came into existence as a reaction to the pessimistic approach of psychoanalysis. See, psychoanalysis of Sigmund Freud actually stated that people have this fixation in life which causes mental disorders later. Stated that id is all animal, it's all immediate gratification. We need to curb it. So we need to keep working, as id ego superego talks about unconscious. So they came out as a very positive approach to that pessimistic thought of psychoanalysis. Two major psychologists, Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow. Humanistic approaches, like the term suggests, it dwells into self. It wants to understand the self of the personality, how the self evolves, how the self learns. Also, Maslow and Rogers emphasize that we think about our behaviors, becoming aware of it, our feelings, our attitude, and how these aspect influences how we behave. So according to Maslow, it was important to know ourselves, which was the real and the ideal self. It's important to know what you want to achieve in terms of need hierarchy, which is Maslow's theory of actualization. So, knowing your feeling, behaviors, and thoughts is extremely important. So, the concept of Carl Rogers is real and ideal self was that we all comprise of a real and an ideal self. Real self is something that who we are, and ideal is what you want to be. Remember, if the overlapping of the real and the ideal self, what you perceive that you are and what you really want to be are overlapping, there's going to be high amount of congruence, satisfaction, happiness, faithfulness. Also, you'll be very convinced with what you wish like. Incongruence is when your real self is not reflecting what you really want to do in life. It's a complete disaster. It will lead to dissatisfaction, unhappiness, discontentment, and further a person is going to lose his personality development. Then was Maslow's theory of self-actualization, which was this. Maslow stated that we all are looking forward in life to actualize, which is reaching to our highest potential, and it happens through series of stages. First is the physiological need, the basic needs. Then is the safety, which is personal security, safety, well-being, financial stability, physical stability. Once that is achieved, you want to become socially involved, intimacy, friends, make a social group where you want to be a part of, cultural group that you want to be part of. Once that is stabilized, you want to achieve. You want to have freedom. You want to be recognized. You want to have that power, competence to be developed. Once that power, confidence, self, and competence develop, you start achievement, and that's the reaching of your highest potential. That happens through the stages. Remember, these are lower needs to the higher needs. It is not from up to bottom, it's always from bottom to up. We cannot jump, we cannot miss any needs that we talk about. Then we have something which is called the trait theories. Speaking of the trait theories that we have, trait theories were theories which stated that, as we mentioned, that trait is something which speaks about personality, dividing people as unique. So, according to Allport, first most pioneer person of trait theory was Allport, stated that we have three kinds of traits: cardinal traits, secondary trait, and central. Cardinal is like the Mahatma Gandhi's non-violence, Mother Teresa's love and charity. Your entire personality is controlled and surrounding that trait. It's called the cardinal trait, a very dominant part of your personality. Then comes the central trait, something which is relatively more generalized. You write it in your CVs, in your introduction, you write it in your resume, and your letter of recommendations. The last is secondary, something which is viable to change, does not stay fixed, like situational factors, choices of colors, food, places, etc. Then came the Catel's trait of theory. It was a very simple theory, stated that we have two kinds of traits called source and surface. Source are the most important one. Surface are the lesser important one traits, and source gives us a 16 personality factor source traits. And this was the 16 personality factor questionnaire, which was given by Raymond Cattell, a very famous factor questionnaire that we had. Then we had Ising, whose testing is so worldly across used by all of us, gave us two major things, which was two major personality dimension: extroversion versus introversion, neuroticism versus stability. Extroversions are people who are socially outgoing, adventurous, seeks pleasure by meeting people. Introverts, shy. They are in control when they are inward and not talking to people. On the other dimension of neuroticism, which was emotionally stable people, neuroticism are moody, erratic, not in control, maladjusted. On the other end, emotionally stable, relaxed, controlled, adjusted in their environment, and also well developed in their environment. There was also a third category, which was called a psychoticism. Psychoticism were people who were aggressive, egocentric, antisocial, and there were socialized people, opposite, helping other people, altruistic, empathetic, and conventional. So this was something which was Ising's theory. And then there was a big five factor given by McCrae and Costa, stated that we have five factor theory, which was also called as Ocean. And it was openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. So these were the five Openness is being creative, and the lower would be not imaginative. Conscientiousness are people very focused and prepared. The others are very rigid. Extroversion and introversion, same. Agreeable people are open to interest, care about other people, very empathetic. The others are very selfish. Neuroticism, moody. The other are emotionally stable. A very famous theory. Having the assessment of personality that we will continue later. Hope the understanding of theories have been great. Thank you.